Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are tackling a topic literally almost everyone daydreams about, but honestly, almost nobody actually understands. We are breaking down exactly what no one tells you about being a millionaire. We're going to strip away the myths, look at the cold, hard data, and see what is actually waiting for you at that financial finish line. Trust me on this one, it is absolutely going to change how you view wealth.
Okay, to kick things off, I want you to picture a guy named John. John and his wife, Cara, have been saving for 30 years. 3 decades of strict, boring discipline. And finally, sitting at his laptop in his kitchen, the one with the standard laminate countertops, the number on John's screen crosses $1 million for the very first time. He did it. He is technically a millionaire. And his wife's immediate reaction to this massive, life-changing milestone, she looks at him and asks, "Did you remember to move the chicken from the freezer?"
Yeah. It arrived totally indistinguishable from every other Tuesday. There were no fireworks, no champagne popping, no heavy black cards sliding across a marble table, just 2 people in their 50s thinking about dinner. So the big question driving this entire explainer is actually pretty simple. If John is a millionaire now, why does absolutely nothing about his life feel like that word is supposed to feel? Let's dive right into this. Section 1, the moving goalpost, the myth versus the math. So, for about a century, the word millionaire was the ultimate finish line. You heard it and your brain instantly went to yachts, private islands, just absolute luxury. Our grandparents pictured a completely different species of human being. But here's the thing, the cultural image of a millionaire hasn't updated its math in decades. Look, we all know inflation is a reality, but actually seeing the numbers, it gets uncomfortable fast. $1 million today buys roughly what $514,000 bought back in the year 2000. And if you go all the way back to 1980, today's million has the purchasing power of just $246,000. So when we idolize the term millionaire, we're really holding on to a word from an era where $1 million could buy literally 4 times what it buys right now. The word stayed exactly the same, but the math underneath it quietly shifted. And you know what? Our culture actually gets this, even if we don't say it out loud. When you survey Americans today and ask them how much money it takes to be considered truly wealthy, they don't say 1 million. Nope. They say $2.3 million. That is more than double the number John just hit. It's like he won the race, but somebody quietly relocated the trophy decades ago and just forgot to give him the memo. Let's look at how this plays out in the mechanical reality of having $1 million. What does it actually functionally do for you? Well, if we use the classic 4% rule, which is the standard historical rule of thumb for safely drawing income from a portfolio over a 30-year retirement, 4% of $1 million is just $40,000 a year. Let that sink in for a second. John chased this number for 30 years, and it safely throws off an income roughly equal to what an unremarkable mid-career manager makes. That means you are still checking the total at the grocery store checkout. It means booking flights to see the grandkids is still a serious budget calculation. The anxiety doesn't actually vanish, it just changes channels, from will I have enough to please don't let me lose what I built. Oh, and then there's the hidden bill attached to all this wealth. Because that $40,000 a year, it's landing in an aging body. The current estimate for what a 65-year-old couple retiring today will spend on healthcare over the rest of their lives is a staggering $345,000. And the truly terrifying part, that estimate entirely excludes long-term care. So a massive chunk of John's hard-earned million isn't even really his to enjoy. It's already spoken for by future knee replacements and daily medications.
Which brings us to Section 2, the liquidity trap and the silent partner.
All right, here is a highly uncomfortable truth. Having $1 million net worth on paper and having $1 million to actually spend are 2 completely different universes. We call this the liquidity trap. When we say John has $1 million net worth, we are simply adding up what he owns and subtracting what he owes. For most Americans who hit this milestone, that wealth is heavily trapped in 2 very specific places: home equity and pre-tax retirement accounts. And look, you cannot spend the roof over your head at the grocery store. Plus, if you try to pull cash from traditional retirement accounts before age 59 and a half, you get hit with massive penalties. This is exactly why a paper millionaire can still feel a surge of genuine chest-tightening stress when the water heater explodes on a random Tuesday. The money is real, sure, but it is locked inside a vault he literally doesn't have the keys to yet. And when he finally does get inside that vault, well, someone's waiting for him. I like to call this the silent partner. If John's million is sitting in a traditional pre-tax retirement account, it was never fully his to begin with. He just hasn't paid the income tax on it yet.
Depending on where he lives and how he withdraws it, federal and state taxes can easily take a machete to that balance, leaving him with roughly $700,000 actual spendable dollars. Think about that. The government never put in a single dollar, they never showed up to a budget meeting, but they are absolutely taking their cut at the end. And this partner, they are not patient. There's this rule called the Required Minimum Distribution, or RMD. Basically, once John turns 73, the government forces him to withdraw a chunk of that money every single year, whether he actually needs it or not. On $1 million balance, they drag roughly $37,700 out into the daylight in that first year alone, specifically so they can tax it. His statement proudly says $1 million, but the fine print says terms and conditions wildly apply.
Let's move on to Section 3, the real profile of wealth. So, despite everything we just talked about, you might still be picturing a millionaire as this flashy high roller who somehow gamed the system. But the research paints an entirely different picture. As you'll see here, we are going to compare John and Kara, our actual millionaires, with Todd, the guy living just 2 doors down. When researchers actually study thousands of everyday millionaires, the profile is aggressively boring. Seriously, John is a high school chemistry teacher. Kara is an engineer. They never inherited a dime of wealth. They never had massive, high-flying 6-figure salaries. They drive used 10-year-old Camrys. Their deeply unsexy secret, they saved consistently, funneled it into completely boring index funds, and then did absolutely nothing for about 26 years. By every visible metric, they look incredibly, undeniably middle class. And then there's Todd. Todd has the leased German SUV sitting in the driveway, he owns a boat he uses maybe twice a year, and he wears a watch that literally costs more than John's first car. Todd looks 10 times richer than John, but the reality behind the curtain? Todd's finances are built exactly like a Jenga tower in a mild breeze. He is likely one slow month at work away from total financial ruin. The data proves this again and again. The people who look rich and the people who actually are rich are very often not the same people. Getting to that true, quiet wealth is brutal, especially right at the start. The famous investor Charlie Munger once hit the nail on the head. He said, the first $100,000 is a nightmare, but you have to get through it. At the beginning, it literally feels like you're pushing a massive boulder up a steep hill with your bare hands. It only grows because you keep shoving your own hard-earned money into it. John succeeded because he didn't quit while he was pushing. And crucially, he didn't actively sabotage himself by panic selling or constantly tinkering with his investments. So, John made it, which brings us to Section 4, the treadmill versus quiet freedom. Now, you might be surprised to hear this, but when you survey actual millionaires, an overwhelming majority say they do not feel wealthy. In fact, an astonishingly low 8% of people with $1 million in investable assets actually consider themselves wealthy. Let that blow your mind for a second. Most of them will look you dead in the eye and tell you they are just middle class. Why is that? Well, it's all about how the human brain is wired. The goalpost isn't planted at the end of the field. The goalpost is quite literally attached to your own forehead. This is what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. Your sense of enough is never a fixed point. The very second you hit a target number, it instantly becomes your new normal, your new baseline. When John was making $40,000, $100,000 looked like total freedom. But the moment he hit 100, he started eyeing the guys making $250. There is practically no amount of money where the human brain finally just exhales and says, we're done. John isn't really chasing a number anymore. He's chasing the feeling he thought that number was going to give him. But here is where we get to reframe this whole thing, because it's actually a really beautiful realization. The mistake was never in reaching the million. The mistake was in what culture told us it would feel like. We were sold a massive fireworks show, right? But what John actually earned is something much better, quiet freedom. Picture this. He's standing in his driveway on a Saturday morning watching Kara back out that 10-year-old Camry. 2 doors down, Todd is rustling a boat he can't actually afford while arguing on the phone about a late payment. In that moment, John realizes he will never, ever have to lie awake doing terrifying financial math in the dark again. The ultimate reward didn't look like a flashy TV commercial. It looked like nothing. And that nothing, that is a paid-off driveway, a deep breath, and a quiet, peaceful life. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought for you to take away today. I really want you to ask yourself, are you chasing a number, or are you chasing the feeling that number is supposed to give you? Because if you are just sitting around waiting for the fireworks, you might entirely miss the quiet freedom when it finally arrives. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.